There's a fad going on called the sugar diet, and Robert Sikes and I talk about the sugar diet, what it is, if it's beneficial short term or long term or at all, what mechanism it's using, such as FGF21, what that is. And we touch upon dopamine, VO2 max, finding the true levers that will allow us to have wellness, and what is causing low testosterone, and if labs are the best way to measure testosterone. I now eat a lot of meat, and so do they. If you want to thrive, you need to eat meat. Meat is required. Hey guys, my name is Judy Cho, and I'm board certified in holistic nutrition. And I have a private functional medicine practice where we focus on root cause healing, and that often starts with the Carnivore Cures all meat elimination diet. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with Robert Sikes. He's been on my channel several times. We've talked about how to get peak performance on a ketogenic diet, how to build muscle mass, how to do it in a healthy way and not starve the body. And we talk about a lot of these things in other podcast episodes that I will put in the show notes. Make sure to check those out as it gets very technical and nuanced, and it gives you levers to pull if you are trying to get your body to efficiency and optimization. In this episode, we talk a lot about the sugar diet, why it's popular lately, if it's something that is a fad diet or if it's something that people should leverage, what are the mechanisms of why it may be working. And then we talk about what really will allow us to have better health, optimization, wellness, and some factors that we may not even be considering when we're looking to heal and to have wellness. We also talk about the importance of labs or the risk of getting labs and measuring our health based on one lab marker. We talk about the importance of testosterone, but how it can get impacted, how it's diurnal, and so why you may test it may not always reflect what is really going on in your system. We talk about all these things in this interview. Let's get right into it. Hi, Robert. Thank you so much for joining me today. I feel like this is our 100th episode together. I know it's not, but always good to have you on. If you can introduce yourself for a quick second, and then I'll put all of our other conversations in the show notes. And then I want to talk about the most favorited sugar diet today.
Well, thanks for having me on again. It's always a pleasure catching up with you, Judy. So I'm Robert Sikes, lifetime natural competitive bodybuilder, went pro in 2023, became the leanest man alive in 2023, founder of Keto Brick, and I've been keto now for over a decade. So I live and breathe it.
Yeah, I love it. And we'll talk more about the keto diet in a second. So I don't really go on social media anymore. I have a full-time practice, so it makes me quite busy, but I still get your newsletter. And so read in one of your emails, it said something about a sugar diet. I'm like, what? What is he talking about? Read your newsletter, and I'm like, I need to have you on. Tell me about the sugar diet. I believe that it was Mark. I think he brought it to light. I'm not entirely sure, but if you can share what happened and then what got it so popular and why do you think it's even popular?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's kind of on the downtrend right
Okay.
now, I think. But it like totally blew up there for a while. And Mark has a massive following, so he kind of, made it go viral all the more. And then Cole Robinson, the Snake Wizard diet guy, I'm not really familiar with him. I think he was an advocate for it. And then Joe Bentley, who's a good friend of mine, he was using it and experimenting with it. But basically, the whole concept of it is you consume nothing but sugar. And I've kind of denounced that in multiple episodes, but a lot of these people are recommending fruits and natural sugars, but a lot of these, big players in the space that are making it so popular are bragging about eating, you know, candy, like stuff you'd find at a gas station, sweet tarts, gummy bears, things like that. Lots of fruit juices, but also lots of just pure high fructose corn syrup. And that didn't really sit well with me. So I wanted to kind of dispel that in the inverse manner with a high fat ketogenic approach. And mechanistically, what's happening here is by having a very high carbohydrates, so a lot of energy influx coming in, very low protein and very minimal dietary fat, they're increasing their FGF21 hormone, which ramps up metabolic rate. So I basically tried to do the exact same thing with incredibly high fat and very minimal protein, and the results were similar. And a lot of these people, they'll recommend like sugar fasting, where they'll go several days consecutively with zero protein, zero fat, and just pure, carbohydrate. So I didn't really like anything of where it was headed, so I just wanted to dispel all of it to the people looking to me for my take on it. And I feel like that's what I did with my experiment.
After I saw your email, then I got a few emails asking about it, and I just thought this is so insane that you would only eat sugar. And I didn't look into it too much. I looked into your, because you also wrote in the newsletter about the FGF21, and it seems like it's similar to how cortisol functions, and your body will end up using FGF21 when it feels like it's in a starvation state or a state of we need to go look for food. And long term, it just doesn't sound like it's beneficial. Are the people that are recommending this way of eating, do they recommend it long term, or is it just a short bit, or what is the intention of this?
See, that's the thing. There's not really much information that they're putting out there around the sustainability component of it. I mean, people are jumping on it because they're losing a lot of weight. There was a really good study done in both rodents and then also humans, where they took participants, multiple different dietary protocols, and then they would restrict protein significantly to elevate FGF21. And what they found in that study, the whole goal was to basically not lose weight, maintain stable weight, and they found that they had to increase their calories by about 20% in order to maintain weight. So when I did my experiment, I actually increased calories by like 1,000 above baseline and was able to continue to lose weight, interestingly enough. But there's not really much conversation around the sustainability component. And that's where I really want to just harp on. It's like you got to find a diet that's sustainable. I'm not ever a fan of crash dieting or extreme anything really when it comes to dietary manipulations. So I would not advocate for anything like that. There were a lot of people saying, you can do it indefinitely and then have just, a couple high protein days a week, but that seems far from optimal as well.
From all the conversations I had from the protein experts, you need to have protein every single day or your system becomes more catabolic and it'll break down tissue. I could see how if muscle weighs more than pro or fat, that you'll lose weight. And so then people think, oh, I'm actually losing weight, but are you really losing fat? I think you're losing more protein. And so tell me more then about what was the experiment you did? It sounds like you said you ate super high fat. So did you drop your protein then to trigger FGF21? And then it sounds like you also included 1,000 more calories, but what was the net results?
Yeah, so back to protein real quick. I've always been an advocate for using protein as a lever that you can manipulate. And when I did my first prep with keto back in 2017, for a moment there, towards the end of it, I was down to like 65 grams of protein a day, and people kept just harping on me being the low protein guy, which isn't the case. I mean, I'm oftentimes north of 200 grams of protein a day, but it makes sense to treat it as a lever that you can manipulate. And when you are fat adapted and you have, pretty high concentrations of circulating ketones, which are also anti-catabolic, and if you're training, which is also anti-catabolic, then for a brief period of time, you can do lower protein without really risking loss of skeletal muscle tissue. So for my experiment, I increased calories about 1,000 above baseline, which my baseline's around 3,000. So for the 2 week span, I was eating 4,000 calories. And then I did close to a 4-to-1 ratio of fat to protein. So my daily intake was around 400 grams of fat and then 75 to 85 grams of protein for that 2 week span. So a lot of cod liver, a lot of keto bricks, a lot of butter. Not very much food volume because it was, so calorically dense. But during that span, my weight actually dropped a little bit, and I got blood work drawn before and after, and my testosterone, both total and free, more than doubled, and all of my lipid markers improved. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
And why do you think that happened with the testosterone?
It's possible that I was eating quite a bit of cod liver, so that's very high in vitamin D and vitamin A. That may have had a contributing factor. I had just come off of not really a cut by any extreme means, but I was down to about 2,500 calories prior to this experiment. So obviously bumping my calories up above what I was probably contributed to some of that. But I mean, I've done pretty, extreme bodybuilding preps before, and 2,500 calories is not a very significant deficit for me. So that likely didn't downregulate my hormones much to begin with. So I certainly didn't expect to see a doubling effect, but possibly just a combination of all the above. Higher calories, higher vitamin D coming in from that cod liver, and then the lower protein temporarily probably had an impact as well in light of the FGF21.
My guess also would be, in addition to the things you mentioned, maybe because you're eating a lot more cholesterol. So cholesterol produces a lot of the sex hormones. So maybe temporarily the excess is like, oh, there's a surplus. Even if some of it's going to cortisol and all the other steroid hormones, now I can produce more sex hormones. So
And I eat quite a bit of fat daily anyways. Yeah, yeah, I did not expect that doubling, but the extra cholesterol probably for sure had an impact as well.
yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting to see how that is long term, but I always think that, like you said, any fad diet is always risky. Although I think people think carnivore is also a fad diet. So there are people that will just say, well, I'm trying to trust my symptoms, and my symptoms say that when I eat just sugar, or I'm trying this diet where I only eat protein at night, I think, or I only eat protein on certain days, I actually feel better, my symptoms are better, and I have more energy. And then when I've tried carnivore or keto, I just don't feel as good. So what is it about? I mean, are certain people just not wired to eat a low carb diet?
I don't think they're not wired to eat a low carb diet, but I feel like a lot of people overconsume protein. A lot of people underconsume protein too. And protein's been in the limelight a lot lately. But with carnivore, especially, there's a lot of people coming into that and just giving the advice to just eat meat. And when you do that, especially if you're eating leaner cuts of meat, you might be consuming too much protein. And that's why when I'm working with clients, I always try to figure out their individual protein threshold. Because when you're consuming, way in excess of what you need, I know gluconeogenesis is demand driven rather than supply driven, but when you're consuming too much, calories in the form of protein, your body's got to do something with that. And protein's not a great substrate for energy, so you're likely going to see a dip in energy, overall performance, and cognition. Plus, you're going to have elevated blood sugar and decreased ketones as a result of that incredibly high protein.
Yeah, I think any day that I eat higher protein and there's not enough fat, the next day I feel hungry.
Hmm.
And I'm like, did I eat carbs? Is that why my insulin is triggered? But I know it's not. It's because I didn't eat sufficient. Like I'll have eaten a pork loin, and then as soon as I eat sufficient fat, I'm good. If I eat a good ribeye with some butter on top of it, I'm good. And then I see it with our clients. There are a lot of people that are still scared of fat, and so they eat the leaner cuts and they're like, "No, I'm eating higher fat." And then when we break down the macros, it's actually they're eating like 60% fat in terms of total calories, and it's not enough. Yet they're still struggling with, metabolic inflexibility, or they're still have some weight to lose, and they're struggling because, it's like they can't get out of their head that one, fat has more calories than protein and sugars, and then two, that fat can make you fat, or that they believe that at least.
Yeah, it's really interesting too because like the bodybuilding space is incredibly innovative in many ways, but very dogmatic in others. And you'll see typically bodybuilders will have protein very, very high, and then they'll drop towards the end of their show prep, they'll start dropping carbs, and then their fat's pretty much always low. And the last 6 weeks or so, they just feel like zombies and they actually lose quite a bit of muscle. Whereas when I did my prep with keto for the first time and I was down to that 65 grams, which is totally a stark contrast to all the recommendations out there, I didn't lose any muscle and I felt really good throughout the whole process. Cognitively, I was just as sharp as ever. So yeah, I think there's times where protein can benefit from being lower. But it's like anything, there's benefit to kind of modulating that depending on what phase or season of life you're in.
How long were you eating the 65 grams of protein?
That was just for like the last few weeks of my
Okay.
prep in
Okay.
2017. My last prep season in 23, I think I only went down to like 100 or 110 grams, something like
Oh,
that.
okay.
I would have a weekly refeed day as well. But being ketogenic in that state, I mean, I'm in an extreme deficit. I'm very depleted. I'm training nonstop. So it's very taxing on the body, but cognitively speaking, I'm feeling very sharp. Whereas before, all my other competitors would be like, feeling like a zombie, that prep mode, zombie mode, and it's just not desirable for me.
And you never experience that anymore eating a ketogenic version. Okay.
No, I'll still feel hungry and I'll be depleted. But cognitively, like I was still recording multiple podcasts a day and doing all the business stuff there towards the very end of the prep. So I didn't see any waning in that regard at all.
I guess when you're not in a competitive period, what would be your general protein macros?
Usually 150 to
Okay.
220 grams of protein a day. I'm always experimenting. Right now, I'm doing like an alternate day fast. So I'm doing, 300 grams of protein on my feeding days and then obviously nothing on my fasting days.
What are your thoughts? I know you say that protein is a lever. It is a signaling molecule too, so I totally am on the same page with you. I see more people eating too much proteins, or they're just under eating in general. But do you think the mechanisms of a keto diet is more of the reduction of carbohydrates, or that we're also eating higher fat and then using protein as a lever? Hey guys, just a really quick break. Nutrition with Judy's private practice is now called Empower Functional Health. I started as a nutritional therapist, but we have become much more all encompassing. At Empower Functional Health, we do functional medicine, chronic illness, autoimmune, gut health, environmental illness such as SIRS, mold illness, Lyme. Regardless of all these names, the goal for us is always to get you root cause healing answers. And of course, carnivore, the all meat elimination diet is always on the table. Food, the right food, is always medicine. We offer functional tests, prescription meds, and really everything to get you closer to root cause, where you can just eat the meats you enjoy and live the life that you are meant to symptom-free. The goal is to get off meds, supplements, and everything else that your body no longer needs support in. Our practice, whether it's Nutrition with Judy, sharing podcasts and free content, or our private practice, Empower Functional Health, our goal is to support you guys in the barbell theory. We give a lot of free content, our evidence-based research. We don't use Substack. We give all our stuff away for free. We interview with the best and make it super tactical so you have clinical pearls that you can walk away with and try in your own healing journey. And then we work with some people in a smaller subset, one-on-one, to provide that level of personalized care. And as we heal these people that are chronically ill, we find these clinical pearls and golden nuggets that we can share then more publicly so that we can make wellness for all. Hopefully, the content and the guides and the free stuff we give out is enough for you to heal. But if it's not, you can always come and work with us in our private practice so that you can get more personalized care. If you want to learn more, make sure to check out empowerfunctionalhealth.com.
Yeah, I don't think you could tease out one or the other. It's kind of more of like a both and scenario. I mean, the once you become fat adapted, the fat's where you're getting your energy from. Ideally, you're not consuming too much protein to be creating gluconeogenesis and inhibiting your fat metabolism. And then obviously the reduction in total carbohydrates optimizes that level of metabolism all the more. Plus just time. I feel like people don't give it the time that it takes. I just recently did a VO2 max scan. Have you ever done one of those?
No, I've never done that, but we actually have people do that test if they're struggling with cardiovascular disease and they have mold illness, but that's a whole different topic. But anyways, so
Yeah.
please share, please share.
So I am not an endurance athlete. I've
Okay,
done
okay.
some endurance things, but I don't train for cardio activity.
Okay.
I'm a bodybuilder. But I wanted to get a VO2 max test just
Mhm.
because a facility opened up down the road and it was convenient. And when they print that out, so my VO2 max was like 55, which is like upper 95th percentile for people in my age group, which I thought was pretty good, seeing I don't do any cardio activity. But what was super interesting is that he also had a graph printed out that showed at what points in that test does your body switch from burning primarily fat to primarily glucose? Because that's going to happen when you're going at max capacity, no matter what diet you're following. And my results was totally counter to anything he'd ever seen, which was that I was using exclusively fat throughout the vast majority of the test. And then I didn't switch over into predominantly glucose metabolism until like the very end when I was, 170 plus beats per minute heart rate. So most people, they do that test, they see a pretty significant blend of both carbs and fat in those early stages. Mine was exclusively fat. And I think a lot of that is because I've just been doing this for so long that my body's become supremely efficient at using fat as the fuel substrate.
And then for the people that are listening that have never heard of the VO2 max, do you want to just give a simple breakdown of what this test is?
Yeah, it basically is measuring efficiency of oxygen uptake as you're going through this to figure out, at what point you've hit that upper threshold, at what point you switch from fat metabolism to glucose metabolism. It's used for endurance athletes to figure out basically what intensity they can endure for a given amount of time. I'm not the wizard on VO2 max because I don't do cardio work that often, but that's the basic premise of it.
And then the person that you tested with said that most people will shift to or use both energy sources like pretty early on in that test.
Yeah,
Okay.
they'll typically have, somewhat of a split between fat and protein or fat and carbs rather. But as they get more and more intense, it becomes primarily more carbohydrate based, which was the same for me as well, except for the fact that I was exclusively fat throughout the first third or half of the test. And then it didn't shift to the point where glucose metabolism took over until like the very last, two stages of a 15 stage test. And he had never seen that before. So I think that just points to the reality of you got to give yourself time in a ketogenic state. But then as you do so, you're able to tap into that fat reserve for energy much more efficiently. And when you think about it from an endurance standpoint, especially like if I'm burning exclusively fat until my heart rate is north of 150, then I've got so much more energy and reserve to tap into before I'm quote unquote bonk or, feel depleted.
Yeah, it's so hard because the biggest thing we always hear is how much time is enough time. Because I know when I go eat carbs before working out, I can lift more. You see the numbers, I can run faster and longer. But when I go and I'm eating a ketogenic diet or just carnivore, I am so drained in the gym. The recent interview I just had shared that over time they were able to lift more, but it took time. But what is that time? And is there a duration that you just recommend people to just keep trying until they get that fat adaptedness?
Well, for people in my space, trying to seek out optimizing performance, I tell them a minimum of 6 months. I mean, they may cross that threshold much earlier on. I mean, you're obviously producing ketones and, seeing more stable blood sugar levels after a few days. But from a performance standpoint, I think a minimum of 6 months is a good benchmark because then your body's got the machinery in place to efficiently use ketones and lipids for fuel. And I feel like that is just the minimum amount that people should strive for. Because when dipping on one side or the other, going from carbs to fat, like you're basically in nutritional purgatory or limbo land. Like your body doesn't know what to optimize for. And if people are just simply not going to adhere to keto, then they're probably better off just, from a performance standpoint, sticking with the carbs. But if you're able to get past that threshold, then I feel like the performance benefits are profound because I mean, you're able to clear lactate and pyruvate much more efficiently. There's an upregulation of monocarboxylic transporters when you've got higher circulating ketones. Those transporters also shuttle pyruvate and lactate. So I don't really get a, burning lactate threshold sensation that is typical for people that consume carbs. And for that reason, you're able to train more frequently and recover much more efficiently. And if you're able to train more frequently, you're going to have increased volume in your training. So everything improves if you're able to recover better.
Right. So you don't really get sore.
No, I literally never get sore. It's kind of weird because I actually kind of miss the sensation of being sore, but I can train squats every single day and my legs are never sore.
I try to do a pistol squat because my husband loves to work out. So he has this weird thing where he's like, "Oh, I see somebody doing a pistol squat. I'm gonna try it." I try to do that, and I don't know what muscle it is, but it got really sore for the next week. I got so mad at him, but I also don't get really sore in the other stuff I try. But the pistol squat killed me, and I was like, I'm
Pistol
never going
squats
to
are
try
impressive. You got to look up dragon squats next. Try
dragon
to do
squats.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I don't think I'm gonna try that. So I will try to build mass. I will try to do a pull up, but the pistol squat just killed me.
How is the
Nearly killed.
pull-up game going? You doing good on the pull-ups?
I've never been able to do a pull up, and my husband said there aren't many women in their 40s that could do a pull up. And so that's always a challenge to me of like when you say you can't do something, like let me prove it wrong. So then I did a little bit of research and it looks like there's obviously the athletes and there's a subset that can do it, but then the people that really can't do a pull up are the ones that when you start from a dead hang. And so
Hmm.
I just wanted to start with the pull up and I got there, which is incredible. So I've never done a pull up until my 40s, and now I could do three in a row.
Nice.
But that's me from standing and then pulling up. But I've been trying to do the dead hang, and that one is so much harder. I've been trying to do negatives. Caitlin, the person the team member you met on our team, she could do probably like 15 pull-ups and she could do dead hang. So she's been trying to teach me, but it has been so hard. So I'll do negatives, I'll do all of that, and I still cannot. When you're from here and you're trying to pull that part up, this part is where I get stuck. And so I've tried the chest forward. I mean, this is not my area, but I get stuck. And I've tried pulling so hard that I hurt my shoulder at one point. So I don't know. So that's where I kind of am right now.
Pull-ups are tough no matter who you are. I've never been good at pull-ups either.
Okay.
And I saw you doing all this. I'm like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. So what I've been doing with my crew, actually, my employees
I
here,
love
is
it.
at some point every single day, we'll take a break from making keto bricks or podcasting or whatever, and we all go to the gym and we all just do pull-ups together, and we'll just kind of
Oh.
rotate through all of us. And we're doing like 50 pull-ups a day now. We'll just do sets of five, 10 sets of five, and we'll just cycle through and we'll just rock them out. But it's crazy because I've got one employee, 62 years old, and he could not do a single pull-up when he started with us. And now he's doing 50 pull-ups a day with us.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, so I just want to get to that dead hang because that percentage, I think it's like 5% or 2% at the age of a 40-year-old female. And so if I can hit that, that would be amazing, but I am stuck. So are you guys doing it from the dead hang position?
Yeah, so we'll get up on the squat rack.
Okay.
I got to pull up on the squat rack and we'll do that. And the last set that I do, I'll do like extended dead hang. So I'll just like hang for a moment longer, kind of like a pause rep, and then I'll go up. And that's been helpful. We haven't transitioned to doing weighted pull-ups yet, where I'm wearing like a weight belt to add
Oh,
more
wow.
resistance. But that's the next phase.
Oh man, you are amazing when you do things like that. So yeah, my goal is though by the end of this year, I'm not giving up and so I'm going to continue to do negatives. I don't know if you have any recommendations of how to do it. I've seen several videos, but it's just
Thing you could try is when you're in the dead hang position, kind of think of it like as a two-part movement. So you'd be
right.
fully dead hang, and then try to just retract your scapula, and then
Okay.
from there pull your way all the way back up. But just practice retracting the scapula and the lats, the scapula. That's the hardest. I mean, even for
Yes.
bodybuilders, like when they're doing like a lat spread, that's the hardest movement to get dialed in. But if you
Okay.
can control and have the mind-muscle connection to retract and open your scapula, that'll make the two-part movement of actually going to a pull-up from a dead hang much easier.
Okay. Yeah, that's what Kevin said too. He was like, just do this for a while. And it's just I get so bored, I'm becoming impatient. But yeah, I will keep you posted. Talking about all of this stuff, I know that you have now a keto bodybuilding event and you're doing all of these extra things. Since the last time I talked to you, it sounds like you have this program now and share a little bit more about that. And then you have a keto event or a bodybuilding event, I think, coming up in September.
Yeah, so this will be so I've competed forever. I've started judging shows as well, but now I'm going to be a promoter on top of that. So this will be the first year of me being the promoter of the show, but I've got the venue, we're getting competitors registered, I've got the judges coming in from out of state. Like we're going all out with it. We got a nice venue. I have my dad there cooking barbecue the whole time. I'm gonna have somebody else roasting a lamb. Like it's gonna be awesome. So that's September 27th in Northwest Arkansas. So that'll be good for the show. We'll just be doing this annually going forward if all goes well. And then the course, so ketobodybuilding.com, I've got all my content, and then I built out a 150 plus lesson course that basically walks people through my exact 7 phase protocol on how to get, dialed in, lose body fat, build muscle, preserve muscle while cutting via a ketogenic or carnivore approach.
Are there other keto bodybuilding events, or is this sort of the first one?
Well, it's not really a keto bodybuilding events
Okay.
per se. It's a natural bodybuilding
Okay.
event.
Okay.
And then I've got several competitors that are doing it with a ketogenic approach, but most competitors do not follow a ketogenic approach. So I kind of wanted to open the door for just natural bodybuilders in general, and then hopefully be able to use that as a stepping stone. It's like when the other competitors come in and they see what I'm eating or what my clients are eating, and they're like, man, I want to eat a ribeye, a week out from the show day and it not be a risk. So I'm hopeful that this will kind of open the door to other competitors to adopt a ketogenic approach. Yeah, it's an all-day event. We'll do like the athlete check-in,
Okay.
tanning registrations and everything on Friday, and then the competition itself is on Saturday. And that website is separate. That one is naturalstatesavages.com.
I will definitely have to check it out, and I'll put all the information in the show notes if people are close by or if they're even interested in natural bodybuilding. I really appreciate that you are promoting natural bodybuilding because I see so many people, younger kids, honestly, that are starting to get on these HGHs and stuff to build their body, and they just think it's normal to have so much muscle at such a young age. And it's scary because I'm raising two boys, and I don't want them to think, oh, I need to start taking TRT to grow all this muscle. And so I
Yeah,
appreciate,
it's very unfortunate. I mean, I've been natural bodybuilder. Greg, one of my employees, he's 44. He's a natural bodybuilder, looks great. He's been natural his whole life. And I'm all for the biohacking space, the technology, the advancements we've made. And with that, there's probably very well so a place for HRT, TRT, for women and men, depending on where they're at in life. But that becomes the default for so many people,
yeah,
especially at a young age. And there's a guy that works out at a gym that I sometimes train at, and he's like 24 years old. He got on the gear and he was on it for quite a while, and then now he got off of it and was thankfully able to restore his, endogenous production, but like he's already having hair loss and he doesn't feel well. There's all these repercussions that people don't talk about because, there's such a positive hype around,
right.
taking performance enhancing drugs. And even if it's not, supra physiological levels, just simply taking exogenous hormones in general like that has a cascading effect. And when you get on that stuff, more often than not, that ship has sailed. There's no getting off of it and restoring natural levels again.
Our body, when something is imbalanced, usually it's because there's something bigger root cause. And if you don't get to that root cause, like sure, if your hormone panel shows that your testosterone or your progesterone is low, of course, an easy band-aid is just take more of that. But why is it low? So as long as you figure out why it's low and then you're willing to take those other exogenous hormones, totally supportive of that. But I would love for people to figure out that imbalance first. So maybe it's the diet. Maybe you need to eat a little bit higher fat. Maybe you need to reduce stress. Maybe we need to remove just eating sugar. There's these things that we can do.
Even more too. I mean, like I think a lot of people they'll get like one random lab panel and they'll show low testosterone, but they've not been sleeping well, they're not eating well, they're stressed, they're spending all their time in front of screens, and they get a low test result and they automatically default to getting on TRT. But it's like, I can be super stressed and have a week of poor sleep, and that literally cuts my testosterone in half. So I mean, like you've got to get some of these lifestyle factors dialed in before you default to the exogenous hormones.
There's been studies that have come out that just in the last 20 years, testosterone has gone down so much. I know people were blaming the low carb diet, which I thought was so crazy, but like carnivore reduces your testosterone, which I know it's not true. But in general, the general public is having lower testosterone and is obviously part of our diet. But like you said, it's also stress and sleep. And when you go in and test your hormones, they're hormones. They are signaling mechanisms. And so depending on the day, depending on your sleep, depending on what you ate the day before, your hormones are going to look different. And so I think people need to really consider these things. But my fear is, so this is like obviously a grandiose example, but Liver King, I mean, he acted like he was so natural and he wasn't, but people saw him, like even young kids or young boys saw him as a like real life superhero. And so they're like, that's how I need to live, right? Those are the tenets of life or whatever he recommended. And so my concern is, as much as my kids don't use a ton of social media, I mean, they still get exposed to some level of those, the shorts or the reels, and then you see these people working out. Like my youngest son loves working out, and so my fear is that he's gonna go. In order for me to get all these muscles, I need to do the TRTs and other stuff, and so I'm so grateful that there are people like you that are like, you don't have to go that way, and it's probably the not ideal way.
Yeah, and I mean, like from a longevity standpoint, like people that get on a bunch of drugs, like they may look great for their prime years, but then they go downhill really quick afterwards. Whereas you look at a lifetime natural bodybuilder that's been just chipping away at his, sculpting his physique over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, like they look way better than these people that are taking drugs. And they're way healthier, have got much more vibrancy in their life and a longer life. So if like kids saw that and aspired to that level of conditioning and health, that would be much, much better.
You're a perfect example. You've been eating ketogenic for over 10, 11 years, and you have like such a baby face. You look very healthy. So, I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
just
excited for. I think my moment as a content creator is really going to shine when I'm like 77 years old, 'cause I'm just going to be killing it at 77.
same, same. I'll be right there with you because you work with a lot of men, and they're obviously trying to, I won't say biohack, but they're trying to just have better health and improve their physique. What do you think is some of the causes of low testosterone?
I had a really good podcast with somebody that's going to actually go live next week, Monday, I think. But we dove into this topic, and it's a myriad of things. I mean, there's the lifestyle factors. There's obviously the food components, stress, lack of sleep, things of that nature. But then I think from like a genetic and an epigenetic standpoint as well. I mean, you look at mothers that have gestational diabetes, the likelihood that that offspring is going to have diabetes early on in life is exponentially amplified. Same thing is happening when you see all these people with, down-regulated hormones now. Like that's going to have an epigenetic effect as well. So I think there's just a myriad of different things that are causing it. The environmental factors, the toxins, the plastics, the microplastics, the xenoestrogens, the phytoestrogens, like all of this in tandem is driving that, average number down. And because the average population number is decreasing, the recommended range on these lab panels is also skewed because it's based off of an unhealthy population to begin with. So lots of things are wrong with this equation, but if we just check the basic boxes that we all know to be beneficial, like getting ample sleep, reducing stress, getting outside, circadian rhythm, eating the right food, staying hydrated, and working out, we can do everything we can to stack the chips in our favor.
Do you have a range that you've seen in your practice or the people that you work with? that you would define as optimal ranges for testosterone?
That's a funny thing too. Like I've never had super high testosterone. Like when I did, like my baseline average is like, on a low end 300 to 600. Like that's pretty much where I hang out, sometimes 700. But that's not really high by any means. So I think mine is partly genetic because everything else that I can control is pretty much optimized. So it's interesting to see this, discrepancy amongst individuals, but also too, when people think of low testosterone and what symptoms come from that, they oftentimes default to, you know, lower vitality, lower zeal, lower libido, inability to recover, build muscle, things like that. And I've never been plagued with any of those symptoms, even with a relatively lower testosterone on the average. So I think there's other components to it. But as far as I mean, it's really just based on the individual because like I can feel amazing at 300, 350, 400, and I've got people that have higher than that and they don't feel well. So for me, it's hard to point the finger as testosterone being the sole contributing factor as to why they're not performing optimally.
I think that's fair. So we do a lot of lab work in our practice, and we have had people that are very unwell, near bedbound, and they get their testosterone. And I don't know if they're on testosterone yet, just because we haven't done the session yet. So the labs come in first often. And someone recently, their testosterone was at 1100. So you would think vibrant health, super energy, but they are really, really sick. And this
Mhm.
person was, I think he's early 60s. Someone else is very sick too, has had manic episodes. They're, I think they're 22 or like in their early 20s, and their testosterone was less than 200. And that person sort of goes with that, right? So, but
Yeah.
but it's all over the map. So you would think that, oh, so for all the
Me too,
testosterone,
especially. He's super young.
I know. So they are thinking of putting them on TRT. So there's another example. And I'm like, please don't get them on TRT just yet, because then he would have to use it for the rest of his life. And he's an athlete. So I'm hoping that a lower carb diet, eat higher fat, reduce stress, and also, he's also dealing with mold illness, but, also just to clean up the environment, reduce stressors. And I am very hopeful that his testosterone will go up. But their first thought was, because their standard care doctor said he needs to go on TRT, especially because he's an athlete. And so they are pausing for now, thankfully. But like you said, blood work is tricky because it is a good baseline to have an understanding of where's my blood sugars, right? So you get your A1C, you get your glucose, you get your insulin, but it is just one measure because you have to go by symptoms. 150 years ago, no one was getting their labs done. And then we are going by labs based on, like you said, the general population. And as the general population gets sicker, they have moved the needle on many of the things, like cholesterol got lowered, blood pressure got lowered. And there's also this intention of, if I lower it, then more people can get on these medications. So there's all these different groups that really want labs to look a certain way. And it's very tricky. And I don't want people to just go by labs because, like you said, I think personally, symptoms are much more important. If you feel no health issues and you're sleeping well, your hormones are regulated, you have vibrancy, you have vitality, as you're saying, your stools are normal, then does it really matter what your labs are saying? So that's where,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like, with something as fickle as testosterone, especially, because I've got clients that have really high testosterone, they don't feel well. I've got clients that have really low
Same.
testosterone and they feel great. So, like you're saying, there's a lot of variables at play there. And like just speaking of me personally, like when I was down at 3.9% body fat, my total testosterone was 87, 89 or something crazy low. But when I went through that reverse diet and increased my food, it got back up to healthy range. So you got to get more routine lab works drawn in all different, seasons when you're going through these different changes because more often than not, people just get a single test and they just put that, as set in stone. They base all their manipulations off of that one panel. And so much can change in a 24-hour period when it comes to blood work.
Yeah, we've had people that said to the like lab core, yes, I fasted. And then their cholesterol comes back in a way that there's no way they were fasting. The cholesterol levels, like the triglycerides, are at 200, and it's because they ate higher fat right before they went in. And so they're flat. There's a lot of fat in their bloodstream. So I think it's really context matters. And that's why I always say if you're doing blood work, that's fine, but also do like consider your symptoms. Tracking symptoms is so important because I know you're a big tracker in so many of your different markers. And it's so important because that's how you'll know like how many hours are you sleeping. And it could be diet related, but it could also be stress related. It could also be how much time away from bed that you ate that it then impacts your sleep. And so by tracking these things that have nothing to do with lab work, you can actually find a lot more clues into what is making you well and what is making you not. But that
Yeah,
all
another
said,
thing,
go
this
ahead.
this is philosophical here, what I'm about to say, but I feel like so many people have this lack of vitality totally independent of their lab markers simply because they don't have anything in life that excites them that they're passionate about. And like I can go through periods of time where I'm not sleeping, I'm super stressed, all my blood markers reflect that, but I just feel high on life because I love everything that I'm doing and I've got no negative symptoms because waking up and starting the day excites me. So I feel like that single thing can have a profound impact as well.
I totally agree. And I was going to ask you that about the sugar diet. I've just been kind of falling into these random rabbit holes lately. And one thing that in the 50s, there were, I'm not going to get to conspiracy theory, but there was a period where people were testing how can I figure out how to control and manipulate people in a test environment. That's all I'll say. And so one thing they used was isolation. So when you're the baddest person in a jail, they put you in isolation. And through COVID, we went through a lot of isolation. And I think people now don't really trust their neighbor, which is a shame because we are genuinely community oriented species. And so when we're isolated, even though we connect with on social media and we're like, yeah, I know what Jane and John and James are doing because look at social media, I can tell you what they're doing today. But we have become so isolated in sharing, well, let me show you my darker times or my darker thoughts or that I'm not super happy with my life because again, whether it was COVID having this isolation and now social media again supporting that isolation, like don't show your negative parts of your life, only show the vacations and stuff. And so we have become more depressed and more, well, everyone else's life is good except mine. And then we get on these meds to numb ourselves. And then we eat these diets that, like a sugar diet or a diet that's kicking it up our dopamine, that's giving us that feeling of, okay, I feel better, but it's not long lasting and it actually makes you feel worse than when you were at baseline. And I think all of these things then are making us not well. I don't think people attribute enough where our mind is, where our purpose is. If we live, and this is where my faith comes in a bit, but I think when we live just for ourselves, like I just want to be rich, I just want to make it, I just want to do it for me or even my family, you will never find as much purpose as if you give back and serve. Because I think when you try to make the world a little bit better, so like your keto bricks, right? It helps people that are in the bodybuilding space that aren't eating a ton of carbs. If you are producing and making things like someone made the chair I'm sitting on. Someone had the idea to build the chair I'm sitting on and this table and the Zoom and the mic and all that. And and if we give back, I think it gives us purpose that even if our markers aren't that great, our bodies are still fighting for something like until I get this done, I'm not going to go. And I think there is a internal human drive of motivation of I want to keep going. I have purpose in this life, in this world that makes me want to live another day. And I do think that's a big reason that people are unwell and unhappy. And I think people just think, I just need to find the perfect diet. I just need to find the perfect protocol, the perfect person to follow, practitioner, blah, 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 and then I'll be better. And I think it's you have to look within sometimes.
Yeah, having a driving sense of purpose is without a doubt the single best biohack anybody can do.
Agreed.
You have reason to live. You've got this like untapped potential and zeal and excitement to live. And it's sad that more people don't have that. And I feel like, the isolation is certainly contributing to that. They don't see how they can fit in and contribute to society. And social media is great in the sense that it allows people to connect. I mean, I had a podcast earlier today with somebody that's doing some really cool. They're making a business basically doing regenerative agriculture in the sea. Like they're catching their own albacore tuna. It's all family owned. I'm like, let me help you in any way I can build this business. But it's like, how many people don't have something that they're excited about, that they're working towards, they're contributing to society. And, with social media, like I was saying, like I was able to connect with her, and that's great. But when you start comparing yourself to others or using social media as a way to check your connection box for the day, like that's not true connection. It's good outreach. It's good, a door open for you. But you can't use that as your sole form of interaction because, as you said, we're a interactive species, and to deprive ourselves of that wreaks havoc.
I think that's part of the reason why, and correct me if you think differently, but that the sugar diet did take off, right? So you have somebody that's somewhat of an influencer. And I should have asked you like why he even tried to do that diet, but when you have somebody that you may look up to that you may perceive has a better life or is more advanced in their life, then you're like, okay, if I they're saying I can eat sugar and I like eating sugar, it tastes good, and then I get the dopamine effect of like, whoa, but it's causing a tax on your cortisol because it's impacting all of those hormones, but long term it's not going to help because that up is going to come right back down. And I just think that when we are seeking these too good to be true solutions, it will make us eventually crash and then we'll just be back at square one, if not worse.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a proponent for quick fixes or too good to be true scenarios. Like if it sounds too good, it probably isn't. It sounds too easy, it probably isn't. Like life is supposed to be, it's a beautiful thing, but you're supposed to experience hardship, adversity, sacrifice. Like there's supposed to be that in life. We need that. We should want and crave for that. And with things like, the sugar diet, like a lot of people look for ways to justify their desires and cravings, and I feel like that's kind of what a lot of that is. And if there's no like long-term roadmap, like that to me is an automatic red flag because I want to be able to do things every single day that compound over my lifetime and contribute to my overall betterment and what I'm able to do to better those around me. And if it doesn't do that, then it's a hard no.
Right. You've been keto for 11 years. What are some of the biggest lessons learned in that time? Has your diet changed at all in that time? And do you feel that you're going to do this for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I mean, as far as things that have changed, I mean, I think when I first started, like I first started back in 2014 or whatever it was. I mean, there wasn't any keto products on the market at that time, which is why I made the Keto Brick because I wanted to kind of scratch my own itch there, making a quality keto product. There's a lot of crap ones out there now because keto's gotten so popular. So when I started, I was probably consuming a lot more, vegetation, a lot more salads, things like that. I don't really do a whole lot of that anymore. I keep the foods pretty simple. I've really put more emphasis on sourcing from, farmers and ranchers that I know, things that I've raised myself and things that I've hunted and harvested myself. I feel like that's been a big shift from what I did early on. Partly because when I started early on, I was just broke and I was getting all my grocery shopping done at like Sam's Club or something. So really knowing where my food comes from to the extent that I have now is a shift. But yeah, I absolutely 100% plan on doing this forever. I mean, my wife's keto. She's been keto for nearly as long as me. My 3-year-old son is keto. He's been keto since birth. And my, 1-month-old son now is keto. He's just eating breast milk, but he'll be keto. And they're all growing great. And I could just tell a difference in like the kids that are eating goldfish and stuff at snacks and candy versus, my kid. And it's like that is meaningful. That's kind of like a representation of what's happening internally there. And I don't want to do what society's doing. So I'm just going to keep staying the course.
Do you ever come across parents that are like, oh, let him live a little and, just eat all the stuff that's at the parties or wherever you guys may go?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely there. People that know me, they'll know I'm kind of an extremist, so they they tend to just let me do what I'm doing. I think I don't ever want to rule my kids with like an iron fist and make them feel deprived or willing to do something just to spite me. But I feel like if I just break it down for them in ways they can understand, of like, hey, look at your friends that are eating all this junk food, look at their parents, look at their inability to play with them on the playground because they're too unhealthy, and look at me and your mom, like we're able to play with you because we are healthy. The reason we're healthy is because of foods we eat. You want to be a superhero? This is your superpower right here. So double down on that. And I think that will resonate with them.
I realize as our kids get older, so my boys are now 9 and 11, it is so much harder to control what they do. I'm sure you're going to experience that. And so I just have realized if I can instill as many values as I can and just, talk their head off basically, that one day when they're making the decisions on their own, and they're at their friend's house or they're, driving on their own, that they're like, okay, I know why I don't feel well, and so maybe I should pivot. And so that's like what I'm now banking on instead of, because like you said, you can try to rule with an iron fist, but I mean, even biblically, it says like you cannot really control your kids. They will do what they want. That's their own plight that they have to go through. So if anything, if I can just instill as many values now, and so it sounds like you're doing that even with your 3-year-old, and so then they'll know like, oh yeah, I remember dad said, don't do this or don't do that, or this is why
I
you
don't,
shouldn't.
I mean, when I was a kid, I was stubborn too. Like I had to learn things the hard way, as I'm sure my kids will. But I feel like the difference that they'll have that I didn't is like they might eat all the crap food and not feel well, but now they'll know what a better alternative option is because they'll have heard me talking about it and living it. And I feel like, when I was growing up, like my parents did the best they could knowing what they did, but I didn't even know what keto was. I didn't know what, any of the stuff that I know now is. So my kids are going to grow up just with this integrated into their lifestyle. So they'll know the better option when that time comes.
No, I totally agree. I think those lessons learned, like I remember it now when what the things that my mom or my grandmother told me, I hear it in my ears now. I'm curious, like I'm just gonna pivot a little bit as we're closing. Obviously, everything is so much more expensive. Like right now, beef is at its highest that it's ever been. And so you obviously have a business where you're sourcing. And I remember you mentioning that cacao has gotten so much more expensive that you even flew out to find the actual sourcers. But what happened with that journey? And then and how are you sustaining prices when everything is like your dollar is not stretching very far anymore?
Yeah, so I mean, when I first started the business, like I didn't know a thing. I mean, we priced them at what I thought would make sense, but at the time, like we weren't even paying ourselves to make them. So like there was no margin. We were losing money. And we kept that original price point for a long time. And I was able to kind of reach some economies of scale as I was able to buy more volume and get price breaks in the ingredients. But then, that only lasts for so long. Like shipping carriers like UPS, USPS, FedEx, like their rates not double, but their rates increase
Right.
every 6 months. So like shipping rates go up, and then with the cacao butter, that's a very expensive, high quality organic ingredient. It doesn't grow in America, which is why I went to Brazil looking to find sources with local farmers down there. But there was a random cacao crisis that took place early or late last year, and my pricing literally more than 6x on that ingredient. So that would have put me out of business had I not found a solution, and my solution at that time was to pivot and offer grass finished tallow based bricks as well. So now we have tallow based bricks and cacao butter based bricks. So just, being nimble, being quick on your feet, looking for solutions and opportunities is the name of the game in business. And it definitely keeps me on my toes.
You had to just find different ingredients, which I mean, I'm a bigger fan of tallow anyway. I know that you sell out pretty quickly with the tallow products. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're both really popular. I mean, cacao butter actually has a higher concentration of stearic acid
Oh yeah,
than
that's true.
grass finished tallow, but tallow is also very high. Both of those two are like the best sources of stearic acid you can get. There's a difference in the taste and texture between the two bricks, based off of that fat source, but they're both really good. I like them all, and I eat them all for sure.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Let us know where you have a podcast, obviously, you have your book, and then you have your program, the event, and then your keto bricks, if you could share. And then you even have Life Savage, all of your clothing.
Yeah, we've got it's a lot of different places, but yeah, ketobrick.com for the bricks. Ketosavage.com is where I put a lot of my podcast content, but the podcast is called The Savage Perspective. Ketobodybuilding.com is where I've got my online course, my coaching options, the book, all that good stuff. And then the competition that I'm going to be promoting is going to be naturalstatesavages.com. And the apparel, we're actually, this is interesting, kind of in line. We're actually going to relaunch the apparel later this year, and we're switching directions, and we're going to do everything like natural fibers, non-endocrine disrupting, fabric, so that we're not using polyester or any of the nonsense that's out there now that could be contributing to lower testosterone.
That's awesome. So are you gonna gear towards cotton?
So it'll be like cotton, hemp, wool,
Okay.
all the natural fibers that don't have any of the microplastics in there.
Okay, that is so awesome. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for always innovating to find different solutions for things that are missing in the market. I mean, that's what entrepreneurship is, but I appreciate all the work that you are doing, especially in the natural bodybuilding space. So thank you.
Appreciate you, Judy. You're a great friend, more so than anything else. I appreciate you and all the content you put out. I'm constantly referencing all of your graphics and stuff because they're just the best. You know what you do.
I saw the one that you posted on X because I go on once in a while just to post. And then I saw all the arguments about the potassium with bacon and bananas.
Mhm. Yeah, people are weird. I mean, people trolls negativity. Like I'm just at a place in life, especially now that I've got another kid. It's like if it's negative, I just don't have time for it. Like I just only surround myself with positivity.
I never really was on X or Twitter, and so the audience of or the community in Instagram versus YouTube versus Facebook and X, they're such different communities. I don't know if you've experienced that, but I've noticed they're very different people.
Very different people. I like podcasting the most for sure, though.
Same, totally. Yeah, congratulations on your second baby, and I'll have to have you on and share more about your experiences as a father of two.
Appreciate it. You've always got an open invite on my podcast too.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Bye.
I love sitting down with Robert because we are good friends and we just talk about whatever is going on in the space. And we've known each other for so long. Ultimately, I think the reason we are friends is because we have one big message, and it's giving great service and products to our communities. We want to serve the public, and we are ambitious, and we want to do better for the world. And now he's a parent of two boys, which now makes us all the more similar. I hope that this conversation just gives you things to reflect on in your life if you are struggling with chronic illness or you are trying to get to a place of wellness that you are not able to achieve. There are more things than just getting perfect markers on a lab or optimizing certain areas of health that you think is required, because that then will give you the best health and the best life. But there are more things to wellness than just what's on the labs. I hope ultimately that you find the diet that works for you, that is mostly meat based, but that allows you to thrive. And then from there, you find purpose in what you want to do with your life. I read something not too long ago that shared that 90% of the people that have ever lived are dead. And no matter how much money, fame, power you had, the people that are dead would do anything to be in your shoes today. That reason is because you are still alive. And so if we have another day to live, what can we do in this life to make it purposeful, to make it worth living and enjoy living? And trust me, it's often not just becoming the richest or becoming the most famous or becoming the most powerful. Yes, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is important. And the lowest tier is shelter, food, water, safety. Those things are really important to have. But then beyond that, it's what else can you do to fulfill your soul? When I was sick, I just wish that I could wake up and make it a day without getting into my addiction and getting into my cycles with food. My goal was just to wake up and then be able to be present as a mom and not to get triggered because of a meal, whether it was outside the house or at the family table. And a lot of times I failed and I would end up in my vicious cycle of struggle. And now that I have a bigger purpose that is beyond me, beyond my family, and serving people to have better health and to have a chance at better health and to live the life that they're meant to, it gives me and drives me with purpose to wake up every day and to do the things I do. Life is not perfect. My life is not perfect. It's not always rainbows and unicorns, but having purpose and giving and serving others gives me a level of fulfillment that makes this life more than worth living. And I hope that our content ultimately, that as you heal and as you have wellness, that you find the purpose in your life that brings you joy, that brings you fulfillment, and that makes this life worth living, because there's a lot to live for in this world. Okay, guys, make sure to eat a lot of meat. Take care of your bodies because it is the only place you have to live. I will talk to you later. Bye, guys. In the recent interview with Baker, I shared that my goal this year is to do a pull-up since it's not as easy for females, especially in their 40s. I'm working on it, and my goal was always to be thin, but in my 40s, I just want to be strong. For the most part, I can do a chin-up, but I couldn't do a pull-up as of April 2025. Only a small percentage of 40-year-old women can do a pull-up, especially a strict dead hang pull-up without momentum. Pull-ups require significant upper body and core strength, which many people haven't trained consistently. According to some military and fitness standards, fewer than 10 to 15% of women in their 40s can do even one full pull-up. In one well-known fitness challenge among civilians, less than 5% of women over 40 were able to complete a strict pull-up. So when I heard this, I thought, okay, game on. My goal is to do a strict dead hang pull-up by the end of the year, maybe even 2 by the end. I started with 0 this year, 0 in my whole life, and now in my 40s, I can do 4. A lot can be done with one day at a time.